Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to jump right into creating our materials. Now, if you've viewed past tutorials of mine, you might be thinking that this is a little bit strange, because often what I do is I always try to make as many of my models completely to final before I create my materials, but this is different. In this case, I find that our environment relies so incredibly heavy on materials because all of the actual meshes are very simplistic. That was just the case in those times. In those times, they didn't really go in the middle of like a desert or something for like very ornate stuff. So much of this stuff relies on materials. And actual geometry, for example, the actual geometry on the wood, also needs to be defined by materials. And this is why I first want to go ahead and I just want to go ahead and create all of our materials. This is going to be our wood materials, for which I already have all of my reference. It's going to be also the wood slate roof material, but both of these, they kind of like tie into each other. And then later on, it's also going to be our terrain materials. So that is the plan for this. Now, what we're going to do is, so for our materials, if we have a look at our scene, you can see that almost everything is wood. This is quite handy, because this means that all we need to do is we need to create a very well done procedural plain wood material. And then what we also need to do is we will need to create a very well done wood planks material. That is like the tilted slate roof materials that you can see over here. And using those two, we can basically create everything. We have our plain wood, for which we can do most of like these pieces, and for example like our ornate trims and everything, and also our window frames, and probably also even our wood planks over here. Although our wood planks, I do want to then add a little mask to add some extra dirt, but that's later. And then we have our wood planks, and our wood planks, we can give it control over the color, so that we can have like painted wood. We can give it control over like newness, to have like this new wood compared to like old wood and all that kind of stuff. And later on, we can also use our plain wood to implant it in our actual slate roofs over here. And we can also do it for our door, although our door will need to require a bit more texturing. And maybe if we do a door and we do our windows, it would maybe be cool to do like a unique texture for this. Even though, yeah, it's not really needed, but it would be nice if we can do something like that. So that's the general idea. As you can see, almost everything is wood, and most of it's just like painted wood and stuff like that. So that's going to be our main focus on this. So for our wood, we are now going to start by creating a plain wood material, and then we'll move on to the planks, and the planks will be where everything becomes very flexible. If we have a look at this, I want my plain wood material to be more in this direction, as you can see over here. Of course, these are planks, but it still gives us like a general feel for our material. So it's going to be like a bit of like that direction, and we're just going to combine it a little bit more with like some other stuff. Over here you can see like another one that is quite close by. So we can just get like a nice general feel for it. We're going to start with our height map, and then we will move on from there. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. What I want to do in this chapter is I just want to do setup. I'm going to set up Substance Designer, and I'm going to set up Marmoset Toolbag, because we will be previewing our material in Marmoset Toolbag, as it will give us a little bit more flexibility over the lighting and rendering controls. But it will also be great for like our final renders that we can display in our scene. So let's go ahead, and in Substance Designer, this is my layout that I often have. Let's first of all create a new scene, and then I can show you. So File, New Package, and Substance Graph. This is the latest Substance Designer, which by this point the name has changed to Substance 3D Designer, just so you know. And we're going to call this plain wood over here. Let's just do that. And then simply press OK. Okay, so our layout. This is our default layout. What I always like to have is I like to have my graph as the biggest one at the very center. I always click away my 3D view because I don't tend to use it since I use Marmoset. And then we will have our base color 2D view, our library next to that, and our explorer plus our parameters on the right side. So that's mostly it. Of course, all of these views, you can move them around and you can move them wherever you want, as you can see. So that's how I got to this layout. This is my layout, of course. Feel free to use whatever layout you want. Now, for our maps, what I tend to do is I tend to already just like delete all of these maps. Although wood is not metallic, we might be creating some nails, although those nails would, or they would be rusty, so I'm not sure yet. So I'll leave in the output for now. But often when something is not metallic, I often just get rid of like that output. So that's already it. So for this one, you just want to go to your Explorer, right click and press Save As. And let's go ahead and create a new folder that we'll call Textures. And in here we will make a folder called plain_wood. So our wood is really by far our most important material to get right. So plain wood, and let's go ahead and save this. Now what I also have is I have Marmoset. So I am using Marmoset Toolbag 4. The reason I'm saying this is because if you're still using Marmoset Toolbag 3, you will not have the ray tracing. So your scene will need some other tricks in order to get the same quality as that I have. However, in Marmoset Toolbag 4 we have some ray tracing just to like kind of push it. But in the end, because it ends up in Unreal, it's an optional program that you can use. You don't need to use Marmoset, I just really prefer using it. So, within Marmoset I always have a basic setup that I like to do. So I will just run you through it. First of all, we have our render. We are not yet going to turn on our ray tracing, and we're just going to leave everything to default. I just quickly tick on ambient occlusion, and I set the ambient strength halfway. I don't even look at the numbers anymore, it's just a feeling that I go for. This will be useful later on, so this will just add some ambient occlusion. Then if we scroll down even more, over here we have the output. So for the output, it would be nice if we just go textures and just create a folder called images. Often we do want to create a render because I'm currently working in 1080p, but I am working on 4K materials. And that always gives like this little difference that it might feel a little bit blurry and not as high detail to me. But then as soon as I render out an image and I can zoom in, then the details are actually quite well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open this up. And just in these images, just call this plain_wood. You want to go ahead and just save it as like a JPEG. We don't need anything special. And just press save. So that's already set up that we can very quickly render out an image. For our resolution, because they are materials and they are just being displayed on a sphere, I often like to set my resolution to a square. So I just copy the 1920 and also paste it in here so that we have 1920 by 1920. This is actually important because in our main camera, we actually can add our safety frames, and those safety frames will reference your resolution. So basically what they will do is, because this is now a square, if we set our safety frames on and set this to black, it will just create these black bars which will draw in the focus to only our material and not anything else. So this will actually make a huge difference on how we preview things. So what do? I go ahead and I always just go ahead and press Ctrl D on my camera. And I call this camera_A. In camera A, this camera will later on, once we have it placed correctly, it will just be locked so that we cannot accidentally move it. For this camera, I tend to set my sharpening in the middle, set my bloom at the same level as the size of the bloom, and my vignetting in the middle. Something like this. Now, once we've done that, we do want to also work on our tone mapping, but let's do that a little bit later when we actually have a material to work with. Okay, so what else? Sky. I like to set my sky backdrop to color and just make it like a bit more of like a darker color. Here, see, something like that. Once again, I just don't want to have any distractions. In terms of the preset, it kind of like depends on... Oh, it opened up my presets on my other screen. In terms of the preset, it kind of depends on what preset we want to do. So, for example, this is like a Western thing, so we might already, that's like a base, go for like something that's a little bit like outdoor, something like that. But you never know which preset will work perfectly fine. So I can, for example, like, I don't know, do like a beach or sand or something like that just feels outdoor. But I don't think there's much interesting stuff in here that stands out right away for, yeah, this one maybe. Park statue. That could be the case. And else we also have like some outdoor presets here. And these will just be our sky. I'm gonna go ahead and let's do like this driveway or something like that. Or maybe like this one. And the reason I do that is because it has a bit of a warm feeling. And I think for our scene we are gonna go a little bit more for like that warm feeling. Okay, one more thing that we need to do is we need to actually import our sphere. Now don't worry, we don't even need to jump into like a 3D modeling program. All we need to do is if we go to Substance, click on like a random noise, for example, right click and select this URL file. Now it will then open up your scene. And the reason you want to do this is because you want to go back to Resources, View 3D, Shapes, and look at that. Over here you have an actual sphere that is already properly UV unwrapped and everything. So if I go to Marmoset and just drag in that sphere to tiles, like that, there we go. And now we have our sphere. Now if we go ahead and go from our main camera to cameras to camera A, press Ctrl F if you have like a strange look like that. So over here we have camera A. You can see that it's like a really warm color, so I'm not sure, this might be a little bit too much. But what I like to do in my camera A is I like to go ahead and let's set the rotation always like 0 and 0. And then just kind of like move this nicely into place. So that we have now like a nice view of our sphere. If you now want to just lock your movement, you can always go in here and you can just press this little lock button. Although it will also lock your settings, but for now that's fine. In my presets for my sky, I'm just going to go ahead and I don't want to have it this warm. So just double click and get something that's a little bit less intense. And else we will just temporarily use like something else like a street here, like street cobblestone, for example, something like that. It does not matter right now because we don't actually have a material yet to render. Okay, lights. That's the last thing that we will be doing. For our lights, if you just right click in your viewport, you want to add a light and you want to add a directional light. Now, I'm going to use the 3-point lighting system. This is basically often 3 lights that you place in your scene. One of them is your main light. 2 of them are rim lights. Rim lights are lights that come from the back. So over here we have like our light. And if we just press E to go to rotate, you can see that now you can rotate your light around. I tend to get started by always setting one of the lights over here. And they will basically be mostly covering half of our sphere. As you can see like that. Color wise, I tend to make them like a little bit of like an orange color. Just like very subtle. And then I just press OK. Now this light, I don't know yet what to do with it. Most of these lights, we first of all need to create a material. Right now it's just we are working on a blank slate. I just want to do like the basics. Then you press Ctrl D. And this light, you basically want to move to the back. And you want to really like make this like a very strong... Here, see like a strong light that comes from, let's say like the top. And let's turn this light into like a bit more of like a stronger blue color. And then we can press Ctrl D again. And this light comes from the very bottom and in the very back. So once again, we like move this down. And you will know how this will look later on. So later on we are going to define this. For now we're just going to make it, for example, like a white color. But for example, like this is like a material that I created. And here you can see it in action. So here you can see like a main light coming here. Then you can see like a slightly softer light that's sitting here. And then you see like a really strong light here at the bottom. And that's the general idea for like a 3-point lighting system. To do something like that. And by the way, let's also set our color of our sky a bit darker. There we go. And that's about it for our setup right now. The rest of the setup, we will, once we have like a base material, we can just play around with that stuff. For now, what we can do is we can go ahead and we can, let me just file, save scene as. And let's go ahead and save it. Let's do in the saves folder and just call this like texture render. Because we can use this for multiple different materials. So texture render, let's save. Perfect. We are now ready to go. In the next chapter, what we will do is we will get started by creating the basis of our wood grains in our plain wood material. So let's go ahead and continue with that in our next chapter.